And welcome everybody to another episode of the Most Important Conversations. September, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Got through
Good.
Milton. Yes, got through
Uh,
Milton. It was, I've been in Florida for 16 years and that has been the most aggressive hurricane that I've
Hurricane.
experienced here. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure you'll have more of them. But
Yep. I probably will.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, what's on your mind today?
Well, we started a conversation. We were talking about what topics we were going to cover. We have this wonderful list of different things that we can cover because every time we talk, a new idea comes in and go, oh, that's another rabbit hole that we can go down. But we actually started talking about what our meditation topic has been for several months now, which is
Yeah, a couple months. Yeah.
money.
Money.
Money. And when you were talking about, well, money's really just a reflection of the relationship that we have with ourselves, I immediately started thinking about, well, relationship is exactly the same way in
Yeah.
my experience. I don't know if that's the same for everybody, but I certainly can relate. I can see the contrast and how relationship has always been easy for me. It's just always been easy. I mean,
So when you're talking relationship, you mean relationship with someone else?
with somebody else, with
Yeah.
friendships, with my children, with my parents, with my aunt and uncle. But relationship just tends to come very easy for me. That's a wide open vein that flows really well in my life. And money has been the contrast of that. There's a weird, twisted story that's been layered upon for 40 plus years of what money is, what it feels like to obtain it, whether it's easy or hard. And then we have a mutual friend that money is a very wide open vein for her, but relationship is not.
Mm.
Relationship is very difficult for our mutual friend, but money is very, very easy for her.
Mm.
It's a wider
Yeah.
open vein. So I wanted to talk about kind of just touch base on or touch on the meditations that we've been having for a couple months now, and your perception, this statement that you made that, well, money is just really a reflection of the relationship that we have with ourselves. I'd like to dive into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, so take out a piece of paper we call money and look at it. I mean, it has no value in and of itself. It has the value that we ascribe to it.
Sure.
Okay, so where do we get our ideas of what's valuable?
Mhm.
Friends, family, community. But ultimately, like anything in our life, we are always projecting onto the things around us who we are. That could be in the form of what we believe about ourselves and the nature of life and the nature of ourselves and our relationship to other people. It could be anything, but we're always projecting onto other things, other objects. And so we do that with money. So money is a measure, really, it's a measure of your own value of yourself, right? Um, it's interesting. So there was a study done years ago um, about who becomes the leaders of companies or just in leadership generally.
Mhm.
And not that this is what it should be, but what they found is that, especially in the corporate world, that most of the leaders have some level of sociopathology going on, meaning this disconnect from their emotions and their ability to empathize with others. Another way of putting it is they're very full of themselves, right? And these people, generally speaking, tend to make a lot of money. So the money relationship they have, or the relationship they have with themselves, shows up in the fact that they then accrue a lot of money because of the way our economic conditions are set up. We could have set up a different economic model, but we chose the one that we have, at least for the moment. And so it favors people who have a very high ideal or idea of themselves. And then they project that out into the world, and then money is the reward. For a lot of people who, which is just a mirror, incidentally, of how they think about themselves. So for a lot of people who struggle with money, what you'll find underneath that is they also struggle with valuing themselves. I'm not saying you have to be sociopathological in order to have money. I'm just saying that's an extreme example of a lot of people who end up being very financially successful tend to have a very strong idea of who they are, even if it's not who they actually are, even if it's an ego, personality or persona that they've created, often not without realizing it, they still believe it, right? This comes down when we're talking about money, we're really talking about the level of value and the level of belief. So what do we believe about ourselves? Do we believe that we are valuable, that we have something to provide the world, that they should pay attention? And see, when you start to kind of follow this thread, well, I believe wholeheartedly that this is what people need to know, and I'm going to tell them. And so, we stand strong and we stand firm in that, and we start to, speak that into the world, and we begin to attract attention to ourselves because we're louder than the average person who doesn't think very highly of themselves. So they stay meek and mild and small, right? Because of the lack of self-value that they have. And what happens? All of those people look to that person who has something to say, and we pay them money and we give them attention and we give them energy. It's been said that there's three types of human currency. There's information, time, information, and money. And information can be sort of a dual information, energy. We give our information, we give our energy, we give our time, and we give money. These are all currencies. So the person who's standing strong in their values, strong in who they know that they are, strong in their belief about themselves, even if it's not their true essence. We're not talking about that right now. We're just talking about standing in the belief of who you are as an ego identity. Those people are going to proclamate that to the world, and the world, being very meek, very mild, very people pleasing, which tends to be the trend, are going to laud all kinds of attention and energy and information and time and money. All currencies are going to go towards where the energy center is. So that's what's happening. And so people have different amounts of money based on how they are. I think of it like planets. It's like a force of gravity almost. The more gravity you can create around your sense of self and value, what is gravity? It attracts like a magnet, right, to it.
Mhm.
So that's another way to think about it, is what is your personal gravity dynamic?
I like this analogy that you've given because I can look over my um, just my careers that I've had in my life, and like in the phase that I'm in now with CEO space, I'll see people present a service or a product, and after reviewing it, I'm left scratching my head like, why are people paying so much for this? I could totally do a better job on that. Like, there's so much
Mm,
information that's missing. Not to say that I'm better than another person, but I'm observing another perspective that they're not considering that I feel that would be very valuable and would justify the price of that. There's that phrase, justifying the price. We hear that a lot in the business community. And one of the most common pieces of advice that we give when people aren't making enough money, and we've said this before, is increase your price. And there's usually an internal dialogue that's going around that. Oh, well, I really just want to help people. And, the people that I really want to help, they don't have a whole lot of money. Okay, there is a channel for that. And that's not the only channel that people need to be tied to. You can
right.
have products and services that help those that are willing to do the work, they're willing to put in the commitment, and that you can help them in that lane, but you don't have to be a victim of that. You can also choose a high-end product for people that can afford a higher quality or something that really does take more of your knowledge or expertise. There's value in that. I mean,
Yeah.
I've I I feel as if being a business owner is in my DNA. It's been part of my family and my upbringing my whole life. And then I moved into a career where I work with business owners. So that's that makes sense to me. And I just lost my train of thought. I hate it when that happens.
Well, let me bring it back kind of to what you were saying there for a second, though. So the thing about it, you're talking about people who have these products and they intentionally price it low because they say they want to be helpful to other people. Incidentally, that's a bit of a scapegoat, because yeah, because that now what you're saying is because of the external dynamics and circumstances, I therefore will keep myself small
Yes.
because the people that I want to help, they don't have a lot of money. Well, why don't they have a lot of money? Well, it comes back to what we were just talking about. They don't have a lot of money because they don't value themselves. And because they don't value themselves, they're not standing strong and articulating to the world, I have value and I'm going to deliver it. You know, I mean, this is not, and by the way, the whole other thing you brought up about, you know, explaining the product, explaining the service, like we twist ourselves in pretzels trying to figure out how to unlock that person's wallet by saying the right thing,
Yes.
swinging the chicken above our head, doing
Yeah,
the dance,
yeah.
you know, and it's insane because you look at people who aren't playing that game, you know,
That's
okay,
right.
I'm not going to get political for a second, but, you know, let's take the Donald Trump brand, okay, whether you value it or not, he clearly values it. He stands from the rooftops screaming about how he's the most brilliant man in the world. No one's ever seen anyone as smart as him before. No one's ever created products as good as his before. His are the best, always the best, always the best. And weak-minded people, I'm just going to say it, will suck that up like a vacuum and go, he must be the best.
Sure,
I
that's
mean,
right.
if you have any self-respect, you won't listen to someone screaming at the top of their lungs, mine is the best, and believe it. You'll be like, what are you talking about? It's only if you are a vacuum in terms of your own self-value and self-respect that you're going to suck that in,
Mm.
right? And even if his stuff was the best, which it's not, right? What does the best even mean? Let's define that. Like that's what is the best? What's the criteria? How do we assess it? Who says it's the best? Just because someone, it's like that episode or that segment in the movie Elf, the Christmas movie, where you remember the part where he goes to New York, he's in Manhattan,
The
and
best coffee.
the best coffee, right? It's like
Yeah.
world's best coffee. And he's like, oh my God. And he opens the door and he congratulates them. And they're like, what are you talking about? Right?
Yes.
Like even they were confused, even though they use it as an advertising gimmick to unlock people's wallets. See, this is the
Mm.
dance that we're doing, right? So whether you like Donald Trump or not is irrelevant to what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is he's a perfect example of someone who believes in himself,
Mm.
values himself, and those who don't value themselves are going to be sucked into the gravity of his orbit. We're just talking about energy. We're not talking about personal dynamics, not getting into policy and, well, forget all that stuff. The guy's selling $100,000 watches to people who apparently can't afford groceries. Okay. Now, what's going on there? What's going on is you have someone who is very certain about the value they believe they're bringing to the world, and he's speaking into a community of people who are suffering to understand their intrinsic value. That does not mean they don't have value. That's not what I'm saying. They have value, but they haven't discovered their own value. So, and this is a human thing, okay? I don't want to just pick on this moment because we've seen this throughout history. For some reason, human beings, until they are standing in their own value, in their own strength and certainty and confidence of who they are, what they're committed to in the world, until they're standing there, the tendency is to give our power away to some other person or some other circumstance or some other situation. I don't know why, but it's just what's always happened throughout human history. So I just wanted to say that because there are many, most of the people who like Donald Trump and are falling for, the grift of the week, whether it's the Bible made in China or, I mean, he's got knives. Like I don't know if you've watched some of the shows. It's kind of crazy, like to see some of his rallies because it almost feels like an infomercial shopping channel thing. So you've got a picture of him doing the rally, and then you've got a product for sale literally on the side, and it changes every few seconds. There's the Trump knife, the Trump Bible, the Trump
Oh, didn't even
alcohol.
know.
Oh
Didn't
yeah,
even know.
it's a whole the t-shirts, it's everything. He's got an entire thing. And again, in some respects, good on him for just playing the game. This is,
Sure.
I don't even know if he realizes it, but he's very effective at articulating, I have value,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And so that's what I'm trying to get at here now all of the people following him, or anyone for that matter, it's not just Donald Trump that people are giving their power to. We give our power to corporations, we give our power to the government, we give our power to the person up the street that we just, for whatever reason, we think they're better than us or something. So the conversation I'm having is stop giving your value and your power away. Start to understand the value you have intrinsically. Start to bring that to the world, develop your own center of gravity. And coming back to the topic at hand about money, your money situation will start to improve. And you won't have to contort yourself into a pretzel to unlock people who don't see what you're bringing to the table. See, that's the misalignment here is people have products and services. They're trying to figure out how to sell that to people who aren't seeing the value.
Yes.
And they're not seeing the value because you don't see the value in them. You think that with a clever marketing statement or some clever thing or whatever, that suddenly you're going to unlock their wallet. When the reality is the dynamic is simply that people give their power, and money is power. So they give their power to things they value outside of themselves because often they don't value themselves. We're not going to change the world. Most people are not going to start valuing themselves. It's a human condition that could take a century to change, and we'd all have to collectively agree, let's heal the world. And I just don't see that happening. So if you're someone who wants to unlock your potential financially, it begins with how you understand, relate to yourself, and value yourself. And you don't have to be a sociopath to create your own center of gravity. But sociopathic people, people who aren't concerned what other people think and are not connected to the emotions of other people, tend to make a lot of money because there's nothing from outside causing them to question their value. They just believe it.
Yeah, you're bringing up a few things that's coming to mind. I mean, if I go back to just looking at business owners and just looking at my own experience, that when I'm working with a vendor, that somebody wants to offer their products or services to our community, I'm absolutely feeling into who they are. If you aren't passionate about your product and you don't love what you're doing and you know the value that it brings to the table, I'm not going to go fishing for it. I need you to display that to me. Then I'll look deeper past what you're displaying to me. But if you don't give me that, that energy that you're talking about, that confidence in what it is that you're doing and what you're offering and the value that it adds to somebody's business, I'm not going to look any deeper past that. And
Right.
then even in looking for my own solutions, that if it's a higher price, but I know that the value is there and it's a stretch for me to figure out how to pay for that product or service, I'm going to figure it out.
Right.
Not going to settle for somebody who doesn't bring the energy to the table, who's not confident about what it is they're doing. And the other thing that comes to mind is this idea how rich people are, right? Rich
Mm,
people are snobby or rich people are mean.
mm.
And I think that owning your value, you just don't put up with a whole lot of bullshit and you don't
Yeah.
feed into people's insecurities when you value yourself.
Right.
I had
Yeah.
that conversation with a young adult, a friend within my son's group, that she had said, you know, I just don't think that you don't like me. And I said, it's not that I don't like you. I just don't feed into your insecurities. Like I'm not interested in playing in that conversation. I don't want to highlight that in you. I want to highlight what's great about you. I want to highlight, what you believe to be true about yourself and the value in which you bring to the table. And that's a common conversation that I have within the group is that phrase, what you bring to the table, and
Mhm.
highlighting that for people to not just own it, but for them to know that I also recognize that value that they bring into the table. We had a team meeting last night on a project, and one of the team members had said, well, I'm very good at making sure things are done either on time or before time. And I said to them, I'm going to depend on you to continue to highlight that value because that's not a strength of mine. I get lost in
Mhm.
what I'm doing. I can easily get caught up into the zone of what it is that I'm doing and easily lose track of time. She doesn't do that. So I put the responsibility onto her because that is something that she brings to the table that's stronger than what I have to bring to the table when it comes to time management around specific projects, especially if I'm getting into the zone of creation around those
Mm,
projects.
hmm.
So that this the idea I want to stay in that vein for a moment of this perception of how rich people are, and I'm air quoting the phrase, well, rich people are this, rich people are
Yeah.
that. I think you're hitting it right by saying that it's really about what they value. My gosh, when I'm sitting at a table and I feel like, what the heck am I doing at this table, the one thing that everybody, their confidence in their self is so much stronger in this particular arena than myself, but I want to be there because I want to see what it looks like to be confident around that particular ability or trait or skill set so that it can be demonstrated to me. And I can see what the behavior looks like. I can hear what the internal conversation is. I can hear how they speak about themselves and that particular value that they bring to the table and that what they know that they do. Um, yeah, it's an interesting perception that you just brought up there.
Yeah, and it's inconvenient, right? Because and I just want to be clear, like my views and opinions about Donald Trump as a political candidate is not what I'm talking about here, but what I'm observing are behaviors that are quite astounding. But it's not about making him wrong. What it's shining a light on is the level of self-loathing,
Mm,
lack of self-trust,
yes,
lack of belief in self
yes.
that is sitting in our society right now, right? So that's what it's highlighting for me. What and look, and I could say the same thing about Steve Jobs,
Mm,
not to just pick on Donald Trump. And to be clear, I'm not a fan, right, of him as a politician. But I have to acknowledge that whether it's by design or complete fluke, he is a person standing in the belief that he is great, that he offers value, and that as a result of that, he has amassed power. It's just that simple. It's just a mechanic. So we can take the personality out of it and we can just observe it on the face of what it is. Your money, your relationship to money is your relationship to yourself and the way that you understand the value you bring. The amount of money you have is completely correlated to the amount of value gravity. That's a new term I just invented. Okay. Value gravity that you are creating around yourself. And that begins with belief. It begins with what you believe about yourself. And what you believe about yourself is tied to what you know about yourself. And so, see, this is the trajectory here is so few people know themselves. Their beliefs are largely about themselves are largely driven by what other people say about them, right?
Yes.
I mean, we learned this as a child, when mommy or daddy is like, you're being good little boy or girl, my validation is external. It comes from without. It's what else could it be at as a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old? We don't even have a sense of autonomy or a self yet, right? So the transition most people don't make is from getting our source of power, getting our belief, getting about ourself, getting an understanding of ourself from outside of ourselves and flipping it to something that's intrinsically known within us, right? I mean, I have no idea. I wasn't in Donald Trump's home growing up, but I would assume that he heard from his parents, "You're great. You're amazing. You're always going to be great." Like, and I know there was, what it's been speculated or people are saying, "Oh, it was an abusive relationship," and maybe it was. I mean, it doesn't mean that just because they're telling him he's great that it's a healthy relationship, or don't be weak or whatever the message was in there, right? But there was something in his growing up that led him to a place where he almost like, well, not even almost, like sociopathologically believes he is the greatest thing that's ever walked the earth. Whether you agree or not is not the point. The point is that belief has created a center of gravity around him that has attracted power and money. And so you could look at Jeff Bezos, you could look at Steve Jobs, you could look at Elon Musk, same dynamic at work, all the same dynamic. I heard someone last week on some show saying, like, everyone talks about how Elon's such a genius, right? And I'm sure he's a smart guy, but the guy didn't invent Tesla. He didn't. He didn't invent SpaceX. Every child has had an idea. Oh, we can get in a rocket ship and fly to Mars. Like that's not a new idea. And I don't see Elon Musk at the drafting tables in the computers penciling out how they're going to build the engine to have enough thrust and torque to be able to get through the atmosphere. He's not doing that. So what's the genius part? I'm not seeing that, right? I don't know what the genius is. We're going to build rocket ships that we can go to Mars. Every child has thought that. Nothing genius about that. His genius, if anything, is standing in his strength and personal value to the point that other people rally around his idea and say, I'm going to build that for you. That's the genius, if there's any genius at all. But it's not coming up with an idea that we can. Every science fiction writer for the past 60 years has talked about spaceships that can hover and land and fly and do all kinds of things that he's not the genius who came up with this stuff. Electric cars, that was an idea that goes back to Tesla. Nothing genius about this. So, I mean, we get stuck in these loops. Now, the mythology around him is part of his gravity. The mythology that he's some amazing genius is part of the gravity that has people throw their money at him. You see, this is the dynamic I'm talking about here. Whether you like him or hate him is irrelevant. Musk, Jobs, Bezos, Trump, on and on and on, dictators, they have this value around themselves that becomes addictive to people who don't value themselves. We're so hungry for value because we don't value ourselves, if that's the case, that we want to suck up the value from other people and we pay them for it.
Or we could align ourselves with people that demonstrate a level of value that we'd like to learn how to value.
Sure,
I
sure.
intentionally surround myself around people like that because I want to
Yeah,
learn how to do that better. I
yeah,
think, and over time I've gotten better and better at it. And I also see that there's a lot of room for growth around how to own my own self-trust and you know what I'm hearing you say in between all of this, Chad, is that you're saying it all comes down to your state of being.
sure.
Period. That's
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah,
State of
yeah,
being. What is the energy that you put out there? It's
yeah,
like, when I was doing readings on the regular many years ago, when I was doing readings professionally, a very common message was this like, listen, you got to change your mindset. A man who lives under the bridge is not going to have the same thoughts or mindset of a man who lives in a mansion and has all kinds of wealth around. Totally different mindset, totally different belief in themselves, completely
hmm,
different vibration or vibe that they bring into the room. You feel the difference. That's a
yeah,
contrast that's being given there. And it all comes back to the state of being and not caring about what other people think. I think that plays a really, really big role in it. That's that it's lonely at the top cliche phrase,
yeah.
but it's true. You do feel a bit lonely up there because it's like I'm owning who I am 100%, and not everybody likes that. And not
That's right.
everybody gets it, nor do they understand it. And sometimes that space makes people very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And so anyway, coming back to where we started about all this with money, so you can see how it's directly connected to value because the paper or the number on your statement, your bank statement, that's not money. That's just a number, and the paper is just a piece of paper. You can light it on fire. It's got zero value. It's the value or lack thereof of ourself that we project onto the thing.
Mhm.
That is really the thing to look at. And yes, there's things to learn about financial literacy and how to manage money and invest. I mean, we're not talking about that. We're talking about how do you attract the money in the first place? And it is an attraction, and it's not the secret type of attraction where you can just sit in your basement and you can think I'm going to be rich and someone's going to knock on your door and deliver a
And it
bag of money
doesn't
to you,
work.
right? That does not work,
Does
right?
not work.
You've got to be out there interacting with the world,
Yeah.
bringing your value to the world. And before you can bring your value, you got to know you have it. If you don't think you have it, you're going to spend all your time trying to figure out the secret code of getting someone to pay you for your thing. It's not me, it's my thing. Look at my thing. Look at, right? See, that's one, again, I keep going back to Trump because I want to be fair about it in the sense that there's things that he does that, the haters can just, hate him. But I like to be fair, as objective as possible, and say, yeah, but what is he doing, even if accidental, that is creating this phenomenon around him? And it's simply that he believes he is the best thing that's ever walked on planet Earth. And we can all disagree with that, but there's other people who are desperate to be seen, desperate to be validated, that will give their power away to people like that. There's no shortage of them.
Yeah. I see it. I actually see the value that Trump brings. Listen, I don't vote. I don't like my choices. So I
Yeah.
totally put that out on the table. But the fact that he is a business owner, of course, I'm going to see through that lens.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some people in my life that go, well, yeah, some business owner is, he filed bankruptcy. Yeah, but what did he learn through that process? How did he become better at business when he did file bankruptcy? What did he learn? How did he improve his strategies and his method? And at the end of the day, the government is a business. It's a business. That's what it needs to be ran as a business. And it would be lovely if we can start incorporating some of um, the new leadership conversations that we've been having, that it's not a hierarchy system. That's an older system. Do as I say, not as I do. I'm the boss. You're going to listen to me. But really genuinely being interested and caring for the people, I think would really make a big difference, because there's just
Mm.
so much greed in that business system. I see it as a business system. Trump also just shows his ass a lot, but I mean, a lot of politicians do. And I don't know, I don't agree with all of that. It would be wonderful if he could show up in a presidential way. It would be wonderful. And I think that people could see his value a bit more and what he brings to the table if he wasn't showing his ass here and there and the stupid things that he says. Again, I don't like my choices, so I choose not to vote because I don't like my choices.
Mm.
But I do see a perspective of him that's like, all right, knowing how to run a business. I mean, he's demonstrated that for a very, very long time. And I saw an interview with him recently in his early years, I'd say probably the 80s, where the woman had asked, how much does belief in yourself play into all of this? And I'm paraphrasing. And he had said, it's all of it. That's all that it is belief in yourself. That's it.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Now, I will disagree with you. I don't believe, but we can cover this on another call. I actually don't believe that a government should be run as a business, because I think the objectives of government are totally different than the objectives of business. The objectives of business are to win at amassing as much capital as possible, and to profit. I mean, in our capitalistic marketplace, the idea is to build something of value that you can generate a lot of money for as part of an exchange, with profitability, and then reinvest that profitability in creating more of the same or related products to expand your market. That is not a mechanic that is going to serve human beings very well,
Isn't
because
that how it's currently being ran?
the government as a
Yeah.
business.
Yes, to profit the most. When I think about business, I think this is an extension of my calling to have a positive impact on the world and to help people and to do good in the world. That's what I think a business's purpose is.
Well, yeah, but most people don't. So most people think of business as a way to make as much money as possible. Um, and and um, and so you put the needs of the human being to the side in that case. So it's whatever is financially or fiscally expedient is what's going to make a business succeed, right? Whereas you look at the needs. If we were truly running the government as a business, um, remember, the objective is to generate as much revenue and profit as possible. Then we would not have Social Security. You would not have Medicare. You would not have any of the social programs that are, because those aren't profitable. There's no profit center there. The post office is underwater and always on the verge of bankruptcy. You wouldn't have a post office. There were so many things that would just be cut because they're not profitable. Remember, if you're running things as a business, the question is, are we profitable or not? So everything that's not profitable would not exist.
Although that could fall into the category of nonprofit, that the purpose of having those types of products and services is to serve the customer in a good way, those that need that type of service, and those that can contribute to the nonprofit to help provide those services to help other people. I see it in that type of flow. So I'm very interested in this conversation, by the way. And I could see it being another topic that we cover because we're almost at time.
Yeah. Well,
It's an
yeah, a
interesting
lot of people, well, it is because a lot of people say what you said. So it's not an
yeah.
uncommon thing. And frankly, I used to believe it as well. I just don't believe it anymore. The more I looked at it, I was like, it won't work. It just doesn't work. The purpose of government is public service, to be in the service of the public. The purpose of business is to be in the service of your shareholders. Now, you might say, well, isn't the public our shareholders? No, because the only thing that defines a shareholder is the only measure is money. How much money have you invested? That's how many shares you have as a shareholder, right?
As a taxpayer, aren't we a shareholder? We are putting money into that system. And we expect, listen, I'm in my mid 40s. I'm expecting, and would be lovely if there was Social Security. I'm not depending on that as my retirement plan. There's just a little extra money that's going to be coming in, and how great is that? But I'm investing in that. I'm paying that with my taxes, and I'm paying for my roads to look nice, and I'm paying for security and safety. Like, as a taxpayer, aren't I considered a shareholder?
Well, I mean, I can see why you can see it that way, but remember the system we have set up was set up after the Second World War with with Roosevelt.
Mhm.
And that, the New Deal was not a business transaction.
Mm.
This was about building public housing. This was about building, to shelter people. They didn't buy it. They didn't invest in it, those people. A lot of those people didn't have the money to. Um, you know, um, Mortgages. If we were truly running the government as a business,
Mm.
um, it doesn't make sense. Here's a great example: the 30-year fixed loan. Okay, that's nonsense from a business perspective.
Yes.
That loan does not rise with inflation while everything else does.
Um,
As a business, that makes no sense. Why would you lock yourself in to a price for 30 years that is not going to rise when everything else in the economy does?
just the
As a
long-term tax payments, the
No,
long-term
no,
interest.
but what I'm saying is there's also, flexible rate mortgages and stuff
Sure.
that every year the rates change based on inflation. But this idea of a 30-year fixed rate loan for a mortgage, which has been around for almost 100 years or 80, 90 years, whatever it is, that came out of government as a social service
Mm.
mentality, not as government as a business. Because if it was government as a business, then your rate is going to float with inflation. I, as the bank, shouldn't be able to make less money over 30 years just because,
Yeah.
you
Or
know what I'm
your
saying?
term would be shorter, like a hard money loan. It would fit within
Sure.
the
Well,
it's more
it
of
would
a,
just be different. So I'm
yeah.
just saying that there's so many things already baked into the system for so long, and we can't just snap our fingers and say, okay, government needs to be run like a business. Well, the ripple effects of that, I mean, there goes your 30-year fixed loan, that's gone.
Not if
Now, how many
not if
people
you have
have
a nonprofit.
houses?
Not if you have a nonprofit branch. There's that piece to it. It's like there
But I
is
mean, but none
it
of that
gives
exists
service.
yet, right? Like you'd have
Yeah,
to
that's true. Very,
literally
very, very true.
re-architect the entire government.
Well, don't government empires have a collapse every X number of years? Can't remember what the time frame
I
is.
think we might be living through it right now. So that means, uh, Jacques Rousseau said that every society has to make a social contract with themselves, with each other. How are we going to relate to one another? How are we going to conduct business? How are we going to conduct the affairs of government? What are the expectations of us as a citizenry? These things um, are part of what's called a social contract. We agree that this is, so we would need a new social contract If we were all going to say, everyone agrees, we're going to run this like a business. Okay, here's what changes as a result of that. Everyone agree? We haven't had that. We've had warring factions inside of the government, trying to bring a little business in and a little bit of socialism, and a little business and a little bit of socialism. And I just think running the government, because of the nature of human beings to drop into greed, I don't think running the government as a business will ever succeed. Here's
Something else.
here's another great example for you, just to put a point in it.
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan, when he was elected, was the first one to really start deregulating banks and the financial sector. In the last 40 some years, I just read this recently. You can go look it up, and it's some variation of this depending on how they crunch the numbers. But the average CEO's salary in the last 40 years has gone up somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000%. Okay. In the 1970s and 60s, the average CEO salary would only increase, roughly 50% over the course of, and the average worker's salary since the 1980s has increased 40%, not even keeping up with inflation. So you have, because of deregulation, those that run capital, those that run the economy, those on Wall Street have had a 2,000% increase in the amount of money they make relative to inflation, and the average worker has had 40%. And we've never had that huge of a disparation between those two numbers ever. This is why you're seeing the desperation of people right now, because they can't afford anything anymore, because they haven't had their wages keep up with inflation and the cost of living. Effectively, the same buying power you have in every dollar today is the same buying power you had in 1980 if you're not a multi-millionaire or billionaire now. It's trendy to become billionaires.
Yeah.
If you're a billionaire, your buying power is up 2,000%. So that's what happens. That's just one thing that we changed. What did we change? The regulation around banks, the regulations around, different aspects of the financial sector. And as a result of that, the money's all stuck and pooled at the top, and it has not trickled down. Because what did a lot of these people do? Instead of reinvesting it into their business to hire more people, who did they hire? China. They offshored so they could make more money. That's exactly what would happen now in every different sector, healthcare, education, etc. That same problem would materialize if we tried to treat government as a business, because of the nature of human beings.
Which is why we're up to what we're doing at TMIC.
I agree. Yeah. In your thinking, if we had a world of totally aligned, conscious, present people, not ego reactions, we could probably run government as a business, but until that happens, it will fail miserably. And you're just going to get revolution after revolution after revolution, because eventually the people rise up and say, to hell with this. I'm not doing it.
There's so much more to explore around this topic, but I think this is a good place to end. It ties it
Yes.
back into why what we're doing and what we believe in at TMIC is so important, and having
Yeah.
these conversations and really being mindful of who are you being as an individual. In one of, I had to write a chapter for a book, and I started off my chapter with a quote from Tupac. He says, I'm not going to change the world, but I can guarantee you I'll spark the brain of the person that will change the world. It's that whole ripple effect, the idea of community and coming together and surrounding ourselves and encouraging people to grow and to be more and more mindful of who they're being in their life, thus being in the world, and the ripple effect that we each have. Each one of us, every single one of us has a ripple effect.
Absolutely. And we can begin to have more of a ripple effect by believing in ourselves, just to bring it all back home.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing we can learn from Donald Trump and other people who have a very big center of gravity around them, it's belief in themselves. Whether it's justified or not is irrelevant. The belief in yourself is the energy shift. And too many business owners and just people generally don't believe in themselves. And because they don't believe and value them in themselves and value themselves, they give their power away to other people who will gladly take your praise and your support and your money because they believe in themselves. So
Well, that's the that to me gives more context to the phrase that you say a lot, that the world will either bend to you or you bend to the world.
exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
And the only way the world bends to you is if you have a center of gravity around your value and your belief in yourself.
Yes.
Without that, the world is not bending to you. You are bending to it. Yeah.
I love
Good
that.
way to end. Yeah.
Yes. I appreciate the conversation, Chad.
Cool. No, likewise. Okay, everyone. We'll see you again on the next episode of The Most Important Conversations. Think about that for yourself. Think about, what do you really believe about yourself? Do you value yourself? And is that getting in the way of you accomplishing your true potential? That's really what we're talking about today. And it will show up in money. You'll be rewarded for it if you do believe in yourself. Until next time, we'll see you again.
That concludes this episode of The Most Important Conversations. This in-depth conversation could set you on the path to self-improvement, which is essential if you want to be an effective leader and take meaningful action in your life. If you enjoyed this episode and want more of these stimulating discussions, you can find them at tmicglobal.com. Remember, the world is at a crossroads right now. You can't afford to waste this opportunity to take charge of your life, build meaningful relationships with others, and co-create a brighter tomorrow. Thank you for listening. See you on the next one.